Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the growth track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry workers, designers, creators, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at fridayhealthplans.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us, and have a great week.
I think we're ready. Good afternoon. Welcome to Denver Startup Week. My name is Tim Martinez, and I work in the Economic Development and Opportunity Office for the City and County of Denver. My emphasis is on helping global companies land in Denver and local companies to grow overseas. For those of you that have not yet registered for other sessions this week, I'd highly recommend that you go online at Denver Startup Week and look for other great sessions. There's going to be a ton of them. And for today, for this session, we have a rock star lineup. And I think that you're going to be in for a treat. First, let me just mention that this session happened because of a great partnership between Denver, Colorado, Toronto, Ontario, and Sydney, New South Wales. And it all actually started about 3 years ago, and it was based on the leadership of Mayor Hancock and Eric Caraga. And with that, a new global team was formed within the city and county of Denver. And part of that mission was to create partnerships around the world. And as a result, cool relationships like this one have developed. You're going to get a sense for the city to city type of friendships as we go through this session today. I've known Michael in Toronto and now Anton in New South Wales over the months and years, and we just continue to get closer and closer and support each other as we grow. One common bond that we all share, though, is that we all appreciate this company, Xero. And we're super pleased to have Tony Ward, the president of Xero Americas, here today. Tony can speak on his own credentials, but I just want to point out that he is president of the entire North American operations and that office is headquartered here in Denver. Xero is on the Australian stock market and also has a big new office in Toronto. So Tony's actually lived in all three cities. I don't know if that was part of his big surprise later on. But before I turn it over to Tony, I wanted to speak a bit about how we organize this session. Sydney, Toronto, and I collaborated on this application last spring. And once it was approved, we each selected a company that represented our market. You'll meet them later on. Just know that Josef, Jeremy, and Roger are all great choices to participate on this session. Josef in particular, as he and Techstars work with so many incoming Fintech companies that are looking to expand and accelerate their growth here in Denver. Jeremy, as his company, Finder, expands here into Denver from Australia. And then Roger, as his company, is a fast-scaling Canadian company that I'm really looking to learn more about. And I'm just looking forward to being a participant and listening in to hear this conversation today. And with Tony, with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thanks, Tim. You did steal my icebreaker, but I'll try to sort of carry on.
Kind of figured it'd be in there somewhere.
Well, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. There's well over 100 years experience on this panel, and I think it'll be good when we get to the Q&A, and we want to make it a pretty lively and spicy conversation. I've been in the tech business for almost 30 years in software pretty much the whole time, and I've been fortunate enough to live in a few different countries and make my fair share of mistakes. And yeah, as Tim said, Xero, we're very happy to support Denver Startup Week. We were a startup 15 years ago, 4 people in Wellington, New Zealand, writing some code for small businesses to help accountants and small businesses work together. So it is possible. Now we're a $20 billion business by market cap in that 15 years. So hopefully all you founders and growth hackers that are listening and watching, you have some great questions. We are going to get spicy. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Josef Scarantino, who is he's got quite the mouthful of the title, Senior Program Manager, Techstars Western Union Accelerator. So over to you, Josef, for your quick intro.
Thank you, Tony. It's such a pleasure to be here today. So as Tony mentioned, I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Techstars and Western Union Accelerator, based in Denver for the past 3 years. Essentially, we invest in fintech startups around the world who are solving a wide range of challenges faced by billions of people, centered on the movement of money and access to financial services. So you might ask, why Denver? It's not typically known as a fintech hub, but it's actually the birthplace of Techstars back in 2006. And it's the headquarters of Western Union right down the street. So that's why we're based here. It's a hub of a lot of activity, as you know, from all the players here. And I've lived on both coasts, and I ended up here after 20 years. So I'm so excited to see the energy of the startup ecosystem here and how it's blossomed over the last 15, 20 years. So pleasure to be here. I'm going to hand it over to Michael in Toronto.
Yeah, thank you, Josef. So hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this event at Denver Startup Week. I'm Michael Kashkarian with Toronto Global. And similar to Tim and Anton, my mission at Toronto Global is to support international companies in looking to Toronto and Canada as a place to expand and hire Canadians, as well as to support Toronto-based companies on their global growth. And to talk about Toronto very briefly, aside from being your friendly neighbor to the north, The Toronto region is actually one of the largest cities in the US and Canada, actually just after New York City and Los Angeles in terms of population, at the metro level being about 7 million people. And we're also home, as you can imagine, to industries of every type, from tech to manufacturing, especially automotive and aerospace, life sciences, film production, video games, food production, and more. But we're also really proud of the thriving startup ecosystem in Toronto. And this is best demonstrated by the other individual from Toronto we have on call today, the CEO of Bibo, Roger Sabat. I'll very briefly intro Roger, and then I'll turn it over to him. But Roger is a serial entrepreneur and the founder of Bibo, an on-demand digital marketplace and platform for construction supplies that enables customers to order their supplies ahead of time or on demand. And despite COVID, they've seen explosive growth, scaling within Toronto and also to Vancouver, Canada City on the West Coast. And they're eyeing international expansion as well. So I'll turn over to Roger to give more of an intro of himself and his company. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I couldn't have said that better myself. So I'm the founder and CEO of Bibo. We are an on-demand marketplace and platform for everything construction. Our concept is delivering building supplies to builders, contractors, homeowners, anyone doing a renovation project, at least same day or within 2 hours on demand. There's a massive labor crunch in the construction space, and we're looking to solve it by streamlining the procurement process of building supplies and materials. No longer does a carpenter need to leave the job site to spend an hour or two at the big box store picking up 2 pieces of lumber. His time is better used by staying at the job site, building more projects, and being efficient with their time. We launched, like Michael said, right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2020. Being an on-demand platform for construction supplies when the whole world is locking down wasn't easy, but it's been a wild ride, and we built a team of rock stars here in Toronto that's helped us scale from a handful of people back in 2020 to just above 90 people today. So we'd be happy to talk more about our journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Roger, I'll take over. My name's Anton Helke, or I probably should say g'day. I'm joining you from Sydney, and like Tim and Michael, represent a government organization called Investment New South Wales. For those who aren't too familiar with the Outback, New South Wales is on Australia's eastern seaboard and is Australia's largest state economy. Sydney is our state capital. We're not just known for Bondi Beach, the Opera House, or the Harbour Bridge. We're Australia's financial and ICT capital. We're home to half the country's startups, and we graduate the most STEM students nationally. Over 600 multinational corporations have decided to base their Asia Pacific headquarters here in New South Wales, including Google, Apple, Microsoft, IBM, Dropbox, and Finder. And I'll mention Finder in a bit more detail in a moment. My organization has a team of advisors around the world to help companies like those on the call today to understand your product or service market fit for Australia, for the Asia Pacific region, to help you identify customers, and to help you set up an office here. So please reach out on LinkedIn if you'd like to be connected to that team and discuss the Asia Pacific region as an opportunity. Our team also helps New South Wales companies scale globally. And one of the companies we've had the absolute pleasure of working with over the past year is Finder. And this work came about through a unique agreement that New South Wales has with the city of Denver and to reduce the cost, time, and risk of companies scaling into Denver from New South Wales and the reverse. So I'd like to hand over to Jeremy Cabral, Finder's co-founder, Chief Operating Officer, to introduce himself and to introduce Finder. Jeremy, over to you.
Thank you, Anton. So yeah, guys, it's the people on this call have been so supportive for Finder. We essentially are a service, finder.com. You can see us in the US, but we're global and live in over 50 countries around the world. Our roots are in comparison and financial education. We build tools and guides to help people compare, switch, and save. But we're on a journey as we invest heavily into product and technology to become a platform that makes it much easier for people to switch and removing that friction to help people optimize their finances and grow their wealth. We've I'm over here in Denver right now with the support, as I said, of Investment New South Wales and City of Denver and so many. And it's just so awesome to be over here and just be a part of this scene. It's booming. Like, I think Joseph, you said something around not yet, traditionally not being considered a tech hub. Well, man, if this isn't a tech hub, I don't know what is. This is incredible. Like, just seeing the amount of investment, the amount of talent that's being, that I'm just, bumping into every single day. It's such an exciting space, and I'm just so happy to be here with Finder and on the ground and being a part of it. It's awesome stuff.
Over to me, I think now. We're going to get into the spicy Q&A. Hey, Anton, just as an aside, I was working for SurveyMonkey, Dropbox, and LinkedIn. We chose Sydney 3 times. So I don't know what I can tell you. I mean, I live there, so that's part of it, but it's an amazing city. So this is for all of the panelists, and in particular, I guess, Roger, Joseph, and Jeremy, and in particular, probably Jeremy and Roger. If you were starting your company again, what would you do the same? What would you do differently?
I'm happy to kick off.
Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, look, I think I would have relocated to the US sooner. That's the fundamental. My journey over here, we kicked off in 2015 and had spent time traveling back and forth. But it honestly is like starting the business again. That's my reflection. And I think, we've taken that lesson, and the 3 of us as co-founders are actually going to spend as much time as we can over the next kind of 12 months and really pushing to grow over here in the US, because it's just phenomenal. I hear often people say every state is like its own country, and it really does require that attention to detail to really get close to the coalface and be amongst it. And I think that the ease in networking and kind of making progress on things that you have in your plans, like it's always much easier to be on the ground. And I just feel so fortunate to have finally made the move over here to start things moving. So that's a big call out, I think, from my side. And I think the second is really just to have invested in product and technology a lot sooner. Something we're pretty unique in that we're cash flow funded, no company debt, and doing over $100 million Australian, which is just over 70 million US annually. And that meant that it's always as I said, we're cash flow funded, so there's things that are long-term investments that sometimes you need to be able to bring forward. And so we are on that journey right now and pretty close to closing around. But that was a massive reflection for us. As soon as you've got conviction in your roadmap, is to just speak to someone like Joseph as fast as you can. Get it going.
Yeah, before you answer, Roger, I think the interesting thing, and we probably won't have too many people from the Southern Hemisphere on this, given it's 6:20 in the morning on the East Coast. Good job, Anton, for being awake at this time. Is in the Southern Hemisphere, what a lot of people don't realize is just the size and scale. They know it's big, but there's literally 17 cities in North America that are larger population than New Zealand and are roughly the same size as Sydney and Melbourne. So it's just big. And I think we at Xero got lulled into the starting in San Francisco, because that's where you go as a tech company. And I think what we worked out pretty quickly is, when you're just starting out in the US, even if you have a really good brand somewhere else, whether it be Canada or the Southern Hemisphere or Europe, you don't generally have that great of a brand, and you're competing in the tech mecca in San Francisco, Silicon Valley for the talent. So you're going to pay over the odds for average talent. So Denver was a great place for us to come, and we've been super happy with the choice. So anyway, Roger, you're fairly new, but you've probably all the things you want to do over are probably super fresh in your mind. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think when I look back at it, one of the things that we definitely should have done is just got our product to market faster and started earlier. When we were building the tech, we were never happy with the product that we had. And eventually it got to a boiling point where we still weren't happy. But we said, let's launch. And obviously the story that you have all heard 1,000 times, the things we found was that our product didn't have the right product market fit. We were getting a lot of feedback from our customers, and we had to pivot and adapt and kind of fix the software on the fly. I feel that if we would have launched earlier with a weaker product, we would have got to the end result much faster. And that was a bit of a challenge at first. And then the second thing that I think was very important, or that showed real strong results for us, was hiring a lot of people fast. And in hindsight, I should have hired more people. We should have grown our team faster to put out the fires that were coming at us, to deal with the challenges in the ecosystem, with the customers, with the tech, with everything that's flying at you as you're trying to build a startup and acquiring a customer base. I still remember back in the day, there's a handful of us, staying late at the office, loading trucks, doing whatever it takes. And sure enough, it was in the middle of the pandemic, so it was hard to get drivers to drive. So sometimes we would have to go on the road and get those orders done. But all those things, while they were fun and I think they were critical in building our culture, they also distracted us from moving in the right direction or moving the company faster towards our mission. So I think that I would have launched the product a lot earlier, and also hired the people to support that project from the get-go.
Yeah, I think people, we could probably have a whole conversation about hiring and people, and how important it is to get it right. One thing that got beaten into me at Microsoft after 10 years there was an okay hire is a no hire. And it just always plays in my head over and over again, even though it's really tempting when you're a startup and you're under the pump, whether it's a salesperson or whatever, you make exceptions and you go, they're okay. Like, you got to be really, especially when you're small. I mean, I had a failed startup. When you got 4 or 5 people, say you have 4 people and you hire your 5th person, if they're crap, 20% of your company's crap. Like, it matters, but it really matters when you're getting going. Like, I can't stress that enough, that it's, culture does eat strategy for breakfast. Culture is about the people. So all of you listening, and hopefully we get some questions on it, that is, just try an okay hire is a no hire. If you take anything away from anything I said today, that's a good rule. I'm going to ask you a question, Joseph, or unless you're going to say something, Roger. Sorry.
No, all I was going to say is, like, from our end, we got lucky. Like, I think Toronto has such a diverse pool of talent.
Yeah.
That the people that were coming on board at those early stages were all rock stars and doing whatever it took to get the job done. So we've been very fortunate like that. But I agree with you, Tony.
There's a few questions coming through the chat, and I think Anton, if you can curate them, and we'll get to them in the end. But this is for you, Joseph. How does the U.S. fintech market relate to other parts of the world, and how can global companies best prepare to enter the U.S. ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've seen companies from so many different countries come into our program, and I think one of the biggest challenges is definitely culture, and just understanding how people relate to money and technology from different cultures is really critical. For example, super apps are really popular in Asia, but are definitely not something that are taking off here in the States. And the idea of consumers using their own bank's mobile app are very common here, but not so common in Latin America due to distrust of financial institutions. So companies coming to the U.S. can best prepare by just knowing their customers really well, staying as close to them as possible, avoid making any kind of assumptions. Especially if you're entering from outside the U.S., you've got some idea of what it might be like. Hold those assumptions at bay until you have some strong data to back those up. Look for trends in the data that's coming in, and just stay really close to those customers.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the U.S. has 90 MSA, metropolitan statistical areas, meaning basically big cities, right? Like, and when you decide how you're going to do it, you can waste so much money so quickly and get nowhere. And so, what we've done is we picked a few and gone kind of deeper with boots on the ground. And remember, most of these are like the size of in New Zealand. So they're very, very large. So it is, and everyone tells you this, and sometimes we just have to make the same mistakes over and over again, but I would just urge you to make new mistakes. This is a general question, and you all have different experience. So what would you say has been the biggest challenge of growing internationally, and how have you tackled them?
Ooh, sorry.
Yeah, you're off mute. It's okay. You double clicked.
Yeah, I did by accident. Sorry about that. I think just the maturity and size of competitors is just phenomenal. Like, players that are, 1, 2, 3 in market are just enormous. And, going up against them head on is just not wise. So, what we really did is we looked for the gaps. We looked for complacency. We looked for things that were overlooked and played there. And, I still have a story of like being in New York and going, like, it was like 2 days in, I was like, sweet, I was setting up my office in Manhattan. I'm going to go straight and interview somebody from my competitor. I went in there and they shut down the interview after about 20 minutes. They're like, look, thanks for your time today. It was great to chat. Come back to me in a couple of years and we'll see how you're going. I was like, whoa, that was just like really rocked me because, nearly a decade in, into the company, it had been a while since we had that level of kind of hustle required to get some traction. So that was pretty interesting. So, there's I think these organizations have structural inefficiencies. They've got areas that are underinvested or, they just don't have the agility that a smaller company has. And that's really what we did and took a bit of a counter position in some areas as well. So yeah, that's probably my biggest call out. And just, not having the same brand recognition that we do in Australia has been challenging. But on a personal note, I think time zones, it's like just hard being on calls on both ends of the day. And, one way we've managed that for crew, at least, is to try and hire local managers so that they don't really have as much pressure on themselves and their personal lives. Because, that's rough when you've got the company that's literally around the clock.
The time zone thing's a killer. We feel your pain. I feel your pain acutely. We do a lot of stuff asynchronously with tools like Asana. That's one of the ways we can actually still get work done when people are sleeping without having a million different sort of conference calls. And I feel your pain. Like there's our competitors, Intuit, who's incredibly huge, right? They just sponsored the Intuit Dome for the Clippers for $500 million. Like that's just one thing that they're doing. So trying to figure out exactly your point, Jeremy, where are they weak? What verticals are they ignoring? They treat their accountants and bookkeepers kind of like a necessary evil where they're like really, really important to us. So yeah, finding your niche or niche, depending if you're tomato or tomato, I'll be multilingual. Just being clear where you're going to try and where you're going to play and how you're going to win rather than trying to play everywhere. I know, Roger, if you want to have a chat about internationally what you're thinking or experience or anyone else, feel free to have a crack.
Sure. I think, we haven't expanded internationally, but we launched Vancouver earlier this year. And one of the things that we noticed quickly was that our base catalog isn't necessarily the base catalog that we should have had for the Vancouver market. So now the questions that we're raising internally are, as we expand to more cities, especially cross borders, like we're doing the research into like, what are the products that we need for this market? How do they build in this city that differs from what we've seen in the past? So that caught us off guard. And the other thing that we're looking into is, the legislation. Like Jeremy said, every state is like its own country. And so we're talking to our advisors to try to like line everything up so that we get hit with as little surprises as possible. Still anticipating a few, but just trying to make sure that we do our research, learn about the market, the products, and the legislation that we have to follow.
Yeah, and on the level of Techstars, what I've seen as we've grown, I think 3 years ago, we were maybe 2/3 the size, of what we are now. And so I've seen us invest in companies from, all over the world. And the biggest shift I've seen has been the difference in investment styles across different countries. So when you have, 10 companies in your program and they're from possibly 3 or 4 different continents, you have to put on this different lens in terms of how investors approach those companies. So US investors, might approach a Latin American company differently than a Latin American investor, for example. So it takes a very specific type of managing director to put that hat on and really get into the weeds with that company and help them raise their fund. So when you're coming from some of these other countries, it can be extremely difficult to raise funding. And the size of those rounds varies per country too. So it's almost like going from New York to California to Colorado, the size of a seed fund versus a Series A can actually be quite different depending on who you ask. You go outside of the US and the size of the seed fund can actually vary quite a bit. So that's what I've seen in Techstars. It's a wild world out there, and it's definitely not standardized in any way.
It's a good point. I'm an angel on a couple of Australian startups. And one of the things, sometimes when you come to the US, when you're looking for funding, they don't ask for enough money. And then the VCs and the PE firms don't really take them seriously. Versus if you were a US company going to Australia and you asked for some of the money that I think they asked for when you in the US, they would go, are you kidding me? That's like a 10th of our fund or a fifth of our fund. I don't think so. So yeah, working that out pretty quickly is super important. Hey, this is for you, Jeremy. And then there's a ton of really good questions. And so we'll get into those pretty quickly. When and why did you decide to expand outside of the Australian market? And did this come at the expense of the growth in your local market, which I think a lot of founders are thinking, hey, everything's pretty good here in the US. Why would I want to go to the UK, Australia, Canada, elsewhere? So.
Yeah, look, I mean, from day one, we always benchmarked ourselves globally because we had global ambition and had launched some experiments in other markets to learn about, what was working in the UK or US. But we put most of our effort into Australia. Really, for us, how we expanded has a bit of a funny story behind it. We bought Finder.com from a guy in the Cayman Islands who was also squatting on Seinfeld.com. And basically, I had to go through all these documented court cases to find a lawyer who knew no lawyer. Then eventually bought it, and that is what unlocked the same brand for us to grow globally, which was cool. And really, for me, I was just taking a close look at our growth trajectory and looking at what we wanted to achieve personally, and not only that, from a mission standpoint, to really apply to the world what we thought was really important, like a business that was able to invest in financial education for people to make it easier to make these decisions, make that information accessible. And we needed to keep growing to fuel that. And, so the international expansion almost was compulsory from our view. I think, one of the lessons, again, as I said, in not going earlier, is that I think we reached a pretty strong position in the Australian market, but from a total addressable market size, it's just much smaller. So the capital available in a leading position, sure, there's profits that can fuel your growth, but if we were in that, the US or another country sooner, and if you look at the strategies of our competitors, they're much the same, just on a different continent, right? And I think that's quite fascinating. But yeah, that honestly, I think in terms of the expense of the local market, I wouldn't say that's been the case. Like we've hired some really awesome executives to take the reins and kind of add their own kind of flavor into the mix of what Finder is, and that's been really crucial. And we're really fortunate as well to have a lot of crew that have been at Finder for a very long time. Some of them over a decade or nearly a decade, and I think they really grow and protect that core, and are able to ensure that we've got steady growth into the future. So it's something that we never really take our eye off Australia, given its importance to our in our history. But and we're really fortunate in the fact that we've got 3 co-founders as well, so it does help. From there's 3 people always thinking about the whole business.
All right, I'm going to ask you, Roger, one more question, and then we're going to go to the actual questions that have come in. So, Biibo is headquartered in Toronto, which has had an explosive tech ecosystem. We know that because we bought HubDoc, which was in Toronto a few years ago. Can you tell us about Biibo's growth in Toronto and Canada so far? And maybe give us a flavor of some of your aspirations, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So after launch in March, we quickly realized we needed more bodies to keep up with demand. So we started hiring people. And like I said before, we found that the pool of talent in Toronto coming, either from university students, recent grads, or people out in the workforce was just, frankly, amazing. So we started bringing in more talented people onto our team and started fixing our product. We should have realistically launched a lot earlier, but we're doing that product market fit. And I think that throughout 2020, we're reflecting a lot internally, trying to find the right solution for our customers, fixing our technology to make it easier for our customers to shop with us. And then in 2021, we started hiring more aggressively once we started getting the first signals of the right product market fit. Over the last few months, we've really grown our team to about 90 people, and we've 5x'd our revenue over the last few months. And now we're looking at, and we launched Vancouver. So now we're kind of looking at where do we go from here and how do we start tackling more markets. In terms of where we're looking to go, Tony, I would say particularly at this moment, we're looking to expand into the US market, perhaps Denver, but we're looking at several cities. What's the housing market look like? How tight is the labor market in the new cities that we're looking at in the US? And how can our technology help improve the construction supply chain in those cities and markets?
Well, I can tell you, trying to get any construction work done right now in Boulder is almost impossible. So I would suggest labor is pretty tight in your industry. So you might have hit, and the housing market has gone bananas in sort of the Denver metro area. So I think that it would make a lot of sense. I feel like I'm working for Denver, Tim, but it would make a lot of sense. The thing we love about Toronto, for all you people on the call that want to know why Toronto, we have our North American dev headquarters in Toronto because there's some really great schools. University of Toronto is the biggest university in Toronto, and they have a lot of AI and ML expertise. I don't know why I'm telling you that, because we're all going to be competing for the same talent, but there is a hell of a lot of talent up there in that space, and that's what we love about it. All right, we got 21 minutes. We're right on track. So there's, I think, Anton, there's a question in there about funding. I suspect that's on a lot of people's mind.
Yeah, we can take that one first. I think I'm keen to unpack the people and the hiring question a bit, given how important it is. But Jake has asked around the timing for raising dilutive capital for the first time, and what sort of analysis did you all have to do to assess a quicker time to market versus dilution? Who'd like to take that one first?
I can take that.
Yeah, you go. I'll tell you a Xero story, and then I don't know, Jeremy, you're in the thick of it, so I don't know if you want to go there.
So for us, similar to Jeremy, we've been bootstrapped. So Bibo was a spinoff from another venture that we have in the Toronto market. So we still haven't raised any capital, but we are looking at raising capital today. And the reason why we're looking at today and not yesterday is because we had the funding and the financing to fix our product, to find product market fit. And now we're at that point where we're saying, how can we blow this up and bring our product to more cities and more markets? And how can we accelerate that? And that's kind of the trigger that says like, hey, we need to raise capital to invest in this and this and this area so that we can grow faster and launch more cities and more markets. So I think the timing for us was, if we get the capital too early, we would have diluted ourselves without necessarily having any good use of funds. So I would say just, can you use the capital today? And if so, then you should start looking.
Yeah, so here's Jeremy, and here's an interesting strategy. I don't know, you all can work out if you think it worked or you want to do it differently. Xero was founded in 2006 in New Zealand. They went public in 2007 on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. Really almost no revenue, like product wasn't there. And really, I think they got 1,100 retail investors, largely off the back of Rajuri, the founder's network, and just, his belief that we were going to do something special. So that's possible. I think it's highly, highly unusual. And I think the scrutiny that you would have going that early public and the pressure to deliver, I think would be pretty amazing. It says a lot about the Xero founder, but yeah, that's one way to do it. Jeremy, I don't know if you want to comment.
Yeah, look, we're pretty late in our journey, over 14 years in as well, before raising our first capital. I think for us, what was really important the whole way was autonomy as founders. We really wanted to be in a position that we could control our direction. So in searching for people to invest, it's been a really important topic. The fact that we're looking for patient investors, people that are willing to be on this journey for the long term and not looking for a quick buck, so to speak. So that's been really important for us. And as far as timing goes, I think probably for us, it would have been nice to have done something a couple of years ago, going into the pandemic. With a bit more cash would have been awesome. I think there's some really interesting opportunities that popped up through the pandemic, and to not have been able to capitalize on them to the full extent of what is possible was a bit of a regret, I guess, for me. But yeah, I think that honestly, as soon as we had the right leaders on board, the people that we could really get behind and know that if we built out a team, they could scale with that team, and that we had confidence in that we could spend the money efficiently. I think that's really important. Like being able to spend money and generate returns is critical. So I put it down to like, you've got to nail that core flywheel of your business first. Do everything you can to prototype it, prove it out, and then pour fuel on top, I guess, and really take off. But for us, we were really fortunate in that we found a very efficient way to scale early on. And that allowed us for over a decade to really continue to grow. And we're fortunate that we're still a profitable business. But I think we just look at the opportunity out there and just, you only live once, right? And I think when you got conviction on something, you've got a clear roadmap ahead of you. I think for us, we just want to compress something that we might achieve in, say, 3-4 years down into 2, something like that. And in terms of timing as well, I think it's always important to step that out a little bit. I think there's, you can kind of get to different milestones as a company, and you get different multiples at each milestone. So, the goal should always be to raise the least amount of capital possible, in my view. But some others, take a different view on that. They just want to go hard out, and but I think there's consequences that come with that. Really for us, we were really keen to ensure that we had an important influence over our culture as well. Like, not having a board that can kind of call the shots and those sort of things was really important. And now we're really proud of the fact that we've got this nucleus that, puts us in a great position when it comes to chatting with investors as well.
Yeah, I just know who you're getting married to, I think would be with the advice, right? Be really clear what they're all about. And, most founders that I know, they have no plan B either, right? They don't say, if this doesn't work, then I'm going to do, X, Y, Z. Like, it has to work. And the other thing I would say is generally, take money when it's available versus when you absolutely need it and when it gets expensive, right? So there's times when money is plentiful and you can negotiate a lot more your terms and who you're getting into bed with. And then there are other times when you're desperate and you're running out of money, and that's not a great place to be. You usually don't end up, super happy, and you end up with a lot less of your company, a lot less control, and maybe people you wouldn't enjoy necessarily getting married to. There's a great question for all of you that are representing, obviously, Toronto, Sydney, and Denver, to sort of give your sales pitch. So I don't know who wants to go. We could go alphabetically, and then I go, do we go by country, in which case it's Australia, or do we go by city, in which case it's Denver? Let's go by city. I don't know who's going to spruik Denver. Maybe Tim, is that you?
Well, it could be. I think they were aiming the question at founders. And so in that case, maybe Joseph, you can talk a little bit more about Denver, but I've got some bullets in my back pocket if you need them. So just let me know if I can jump in at some point.
So this is aimed at founders.
Well, I'll tell you why we chose Xero, and I sort of said it before. We actually originally put our customer experience team in Denver and kind of sales and product in San Francisco. That didn't work particularly well for us. Go see point one about talent. And we realized that there was amazing talent in Denver. And Jeremy talked about time zones. Denver's right in the middle pretty much. So it's 3 hours from everywhere if you're going to fly somewhere. But it's also not bad dealing with Europe. I say not bad. and it's not bad dealing with, Australia/New Zealand, depending on if it's kind of daylight saving time or not. Winter is better for us up here because we get a little more crossover with the Southern Hemisphere. That's why we chose it. And we also, I think, in terms of attracting employees, it's a great place to live. People that want to be outside, that have a kind of, I don't know, it sounds a bit cheesy, Tim, kind of that frontier person mentality. That's kind of what this place is about. It's, get wild, get out there, give it a crack. I think that's why we chose Denver in the US.
But another thing to think about is just our airport and the fact that, we've got so many direct flights throughout the United States that are the cheapest of anywhere in the country. So if you're based in Denver, which is halfway between, the two large markets on either coast and then Mexico and Canada, and you can fly to San Francisco and home and be home in time for your kids' dinner, that's pretty impressive. And if you can go the opposite direction to the East Coast and still be back in time, that's a pretty good sales pitch. Not to mention 300 days of sunshine, not to mention, all the other reasons why you want to live here. But it's just a really nice place to do business.
Yeah, we often tell our founders, base your company where you want to live, not where the capital is, because the capital will follow you. And I remember the first time I came to Colorado, it was for a business trip. I had no intention of moving here. And 6 months later, I was here. It actually was, a combination of the mountains and the beauty and everything. But what really struck me was just how friendly people were, and just that willingness to, meet with anybody, talk with anybody, share with anybody. That's something you don't, find everywhere. So it's really powerful.
It's a little like Sydney, right? Because not many people shouldn't say that. A lot of people move here, right? It's not, you don't necessarily find Denver born and bred. I think Australia, Sydney in particular, is very similar. I think 40% of people that live in Sydney were not born in Australia. So it's a real melting pot and people just coming in. So Anton, you don't have to pitch Sydney to me. I mean, I love it, but you should pitch it anyway.
I think I feel like you've read my deck. 40% of Sydney's residents were born overseas. So well done. I threw some stats out, some points, I guess, at the beginning. Time zone's a big one for us. It aligns, Sydney aligns with the business hours of the key Asian markets. You can hit the opening of Europe and the closing of North America. I think living standards comes down to it, to Joseph's point. Sydney's a great place to live. I think I'm more interested, no one wants to hear from sort of the government perspective. I'm quite biased, but Jeremy, if you're able to sort of elaborate perhaps on the ecosystem here from a tech perspective, and I'm sure you've had the opportunity, or potentially other cities in Australia, why Sydney made sense for you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's really interesting is, like, we've got offices in Sydney, Toronto, and Denver, and there's actually similarities between the three cities. I think the thing about Sydney is, or the Australian tech scene, is that it's really coming into, like, I think 2021 is its year. Like, I really think there's a lot of attention and investment going to Australia right now, and there's a number of large Australian, I guess, companies started in Australia that are now making some serious headlines globally, and that's drawing attention. And what I found in Australia is that as far as government supporters, it's really accessible. There's a lot of people that are willing to just be contactable, have a coffee, chat to you, like, learn more about your business, and then just connect you with other organizations that are related and able to help you on the journey. Like, really, for me, I was walking down the street, I saw something on the fact that the city of Denver and Investment New South Wales had partnered, and I spoke to some guys around, like, we were actually in the middle of choosing where to place our tech hub, and we had such a rapid response from Investment New South Wales, and then also the Colorado State and City of Denver around supporting our journey to launch here, which was amazing. And it made it a lot easier for us in that we had a couple of people that had been with the company for a long time as well. And just to go back to the point of culture, there's a gentleman, Adrian Tompkins, who has been with Finder, and he's an incredible product and tech leader. And I think that that nucleus is so crucial to have someone on the ground that can really, teach people what your company is all about, like the behaviors and the actions and the things that you reward, where you reprimand, and that's important. But yeah, like I just honestly put it down to that, and I've had the same experience in interacting with, city of Denver. Everyone just seems so friendly, like to keen to reach out and help out, and weirdly, there's all these Aussies here as well that I had no idea that are all around that I've known some of them for over a decade as well. I'm just going to reconnect with them over the time I'm here. So it's pretty special.
I think all three cities, they are very similar. They're very, a lot of people have moved here, and generally, immigrants build things. Like if you have enough get up and go to move to another country or another city, generally you got quite a lot of get up and go, and they're all quite similar in that way, and quite kind of multicultural. And I think, I'll get to you, Michael, but I think in the former president here, when he made immigration very difficult for the US, Canada was super smart, and they jumped all over that and offered visas for, founders and tech people to come to Canada, which I thought was very clever, very, very not Canadian, generally taking advantage of something like that, but I loved it. But yeah, I've lived in Toronto, but over to you, Michael. Talk about Toronto as a place to go.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'll say my thing very quickly, but then I, would love to kind of hear kind of Roger's validation of it. But I think there's commonalities between all three of our cities. I think some of the things that were said, Anton, you said, over 40% of Sydney's residents are born outside of Australia, where over 50% of Toronto's residents are born outside of Canada. So we have that commonality. And Tony, to your comment, there is the Global Talent Stream immigration program that allows for very rapid hiring of folks from abroad, anywhere in the world, within a matter of a couple months, to have them go from job offer to working for you in Canada. And then, of course, some of the other things, East Coast time zones, so covering kind of the U.S. East Coast from Toronto, international access, connectivity, similar to what Tim and Anton said for their markets. And then also, our size and we're the fastest growing city in North America, and I'm sure Denver is very close behind us there. And I would like to think as well, kind of our friendliness too. I know it's a bit of a Canadian stereotype, but hopefully that's and I know Toronto's a big city, but hopefully that's something that's a hallmark of ours. But yeah, I'll see what Roger thinks in terms of whether that's valid or not.
Yeah, Michael, I agree wholeheartedly. Myself, I'm an immigrant. I came to Toronto when I was a kid. And one of the things that sticks out to me is just the amount of diversity and how inclusive the community is. It's just like an amazing place to do business. There's so many different, like the city's so vibrant. It's a big city as it is. And it's growing rapidly. And, you come across people from all different walks of life, founders, entrepreneurs, developers, engineers, machine learning from U of T, like you said, Tony. And it's just like such a great ecosystem to launch a new company. And, from our end, like we were in the building supply space, and then we started a tech company that we spun out from it. So we had to learn about tech startups, infrastructure, and we had to learn really fast. And we found all the support in the world here in Toronto. And I think that, it's just an amazing city to live in. The only thing I would caution is the winters can get really cold, but we've learned to deal with the winters. And aside from that, if you like to ski and snowboard, it's awesome too, because we got a lot of snow, a lot of it. So.
Hey, I grew up in Winnipeg. Toronto's nothing on that winter. Come on.
I've been to Winnipeg, so I agree.
yeah. Toronto, you guys are soft if you think that's winter. Look, there's a question on here about Sydney. Why Sydney, not Gold Coast or Brisbane? You should probably reach out to Anton directly. I mean, they're both in Queensland. There's nothing wrong with Queensland. Those are beautiful places. But to be honest, if you're going to Australia, the only question really is Sydney or Melbourne. That's really because that's where the business is. That would be effectively your choice. Brisbane would be the third largest city. Beautiful, growing fast. The Olympics are going to be there in 2032, which is amazing. 3 Olympics from now, which will come by pretty quickly. I think we'll do the people question because that's the one I think we should get to and hear you all's perspective.
I guess the last 3 minutes, and I know we had a really interesting discussion when we met before this call about the importance, I suppose, of finding a country manager or a country head that's perhaps been a CEO in the past, but so they can set strategy. But to Roger's point, they can roll up their sleeves, they can get in the truck, and they can make deliveries. What is your top tip on recruiting your initial team, and what are the sort of the biggest challenge there? Tony,
Well,
did you want to take
I've been
first?
that 3 times for US tech companies in Australia. And every time it was the same. They came in looking for, they thought a sales leader. And then basically they either tried that and it didn't work out. And then they said, oh, we actually need somebody who can deal with government. Like I met Minister Constance and Dominello for New South Wales. Like you have to be able to go and talk to government, big customers, and then take out the trash, rubbish, garbage, whatever you want to call it, all at the same time. So I think the temptation would be to under-hire because you can get them for less money, particularly when you're on the cash burn. But think about, this person has to be your proxy in that country or that region. When you're sleeping, they're representing you to, government, the big banks, big business, whatever. So like everything in life, you get what you pay for. If you want to buy a Corolla, you buy a Corolla. If you want to buy a BMW, you buy a BMW. It costs you more, but you get a better car. I don't know if, Jeremy, you've probably had some experience where maybe it's gone right and it's gone wrong, or others.
Yeah, totally. I think, our journey was like, we had a lot of organic growth with hiring a lot of graduates, but we kind of hit a phase where we wanted to bring multipliers into the business. And I think, strong leadership is, you can't invest enough in it. It really scales you as a founder and allows you to, focus on strategic things versus, just keeping things moving. And that's absolutely crucial. And the great point on the proxy in different time zones as well. Like, with the global business, you got to be around the clock and you need people that you can trust to make decisions in that time zone.
Yeah, I remember working at LinkedIn, and the guy that ran LinkedIn globally, we were having this meeting in Sydney, and we were sort of complaining about, speed and not being able to do things. And his answer was brilliant. He said, you got a credit card, use it. Like, if you hire people that you trust and that they fit the values of your company, what did Steve Jobs say? You hire smart people and get the hell out of the way. Like, empower them to sort of go and do what you need to get done. Don't bog them down in process. If you want people like that, I would say you're probably in the wrong game. You want people that can deal with ambiguity. And the polite way is, the competency is drive for results, but it's actually, you got the get shit done gene. You just get in and get it done. That's what you need. I think we're at time. And we could probably go on for ages, but yeah, I feel you can. Hey, Tim, what's the sort of follow-up from this? Is there a way to connect with people other than LinkedIn?
Yeah, for sure. And so if you are in any one of those cities and you want to get in touch with one of the other cities, if you're in Denver, feel free to get in touch with me. I'm happy to put you in touch with Anton or Michael. If you're in their cities, feel free to reach out to your representative. This is a collaboration that has actually been happening over the years, Tony, where we did something similar to this at SparkFest. We had a delegation plan to go to Toronto Global for Collision a couple of years ago. So we can't wait until they open up the airports and the borders, and we can start to travel and start to do more of this sort of thing. I think we've deputized you personally to go out and sell all 3 of our cities. So we'll get you a little star, and you can act on our behalf. You can be our beachhead on some of those conversations. I wanted to also mention that Alex, who asked that question, where can each one of you sell your city? I don't think that was one that we put out there as a softball. I think they asked that question. So if they want to give their Venmo, I'm sure Michael and Anton and I would each be willing to give $10 for doing that. So other than that, we're looking forward to the next opportunity for the 3 of our cities to get back together and have a similar conversation. Maybe we can be more specific if we want to talk just about fintech, or we want to go a certain direction. But we also, I think, want to continue to have Xero along for the ride, because your story just fits with everything that we're trying to tell as we go out there, where you guys have, been on the bloody edge of some difficult decisions and have been very successful because of that. So with that, thank you, Tony. Thank you,
No
Anton.
worries.
Thank you, Michael. Jeremy, Roger, and Joseph, you guys are the real rock stars here. We're just, standing behind you and trying to hand you a shovel when the snow gets deep. So good work.
Yeah, I just
Thanks,
hope all the
everybody.
founders on the call, I wish you all the best of luck in what you're doing. And I know it can be challenging at times, but I think, like Jeremy said, just believe in it. If you really believe in it and you put everything you got and you got no plan B, that's the best chance you have to be successful. So I wish you all the luck in the world. And with that, over and out.
Good work, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.